This is a Red FM Vancouver podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe for more great content. For further info, log on to redfm.ca.
ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਿੱਸੇ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਟਿਵ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਰ ਨੇ, ਸਾਡੇ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਕਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ ਹਨ ਗਲੋਬਲ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਸੈਮ ਕੂਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਜੂਏਖਾਨਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਲਿਆਂਦਾ ਸੀ। ਫਿਰ ਹੁਣ ਸੈਮ ਕੂਪਰ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੀਂ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਚੀਨ ਨੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੂਜੇ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਸੈੱਲ ਬਣਾਏ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਚੀਨ ਦੀ ਗੌਰਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਹੁਕਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਹਨ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਫਰੰਟ। ਇਹ ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਫਰੰਟ ਦੀ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਵੀ ਸੈਮ ਕੂਪਰ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੱਢੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਸੈਮ ਕੂਪਰ ਜੀ ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸਣਗੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਚਾਈਨਾ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਓਪਰੇਟ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਚੀਨ ਤੋਂ ਬੈਠਿਆਂ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਫਰੰਟ ਖੋਲ੍ਹੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਫਰੰਟ, ਇਹ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਘੁਸਪੈਠ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਮਾਜਿਕ ਹੋਰ ਇਕਾਈਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਜਾਸੂਸੀ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਮਿਸਟਰ ਕੂਪਰ, ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ।
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for your time. And please give us a little bit more information about the report that you have investigated. What are the troubling issues in it?
The troubling issues are, we found that as many experts around the world have now concluded, China was, at least to a certain extent, covering up the extent of its pandemic risk in December and January. And at the same time, they were so concerned about the threat in their nation that they needed more of the so-called PPE, or safety masks, gowns, and disinfectant. So what we found was that the Chinese state at a high level undertook a large global operation to import as many safety masks as they could, starting in January. And this is at the time when they are concealing to the rest of the world the danger of the pandemic spread. And so from late January, the 24th, until the end of February, China's own customs data shows they imported over 2 billion safety masks. Mm-hmm. And the piece that I found that was extremely interesting in Canada and worldwide is that the Chinese Communist Party used a number of avenues, including the agency called the United Front. And according to the experts, this is an influence and an espionage tool. And the very troubling aspect is that China's Communist Party attempts to control Chinese citizens around the world through this agency. And let me be clear, my research shows that many Chinese Canadians reject and resist these attempts by the Communist Party. But on the other hand, we found that many United Front associated business groups did take part in shipping masks to China, a very large amount of masks.
And Mr. Cooper, what is the structure of this United Front? Is it a kind of organization controlled by the Chinese government, or are they working independently here? Over and above this getting masks or PPEs, what else they are doing? Are they influencing our politicians here in Canada in any way?
Yes, according to our intelligence services, some of the law enforcement experts I speak to in Canada and the United States, the United Front is essentially controlled right from the top in China. The very top, Xi Jinping, now the president in China, has vastly increased the resources of this agency. And essentially, to explain it very simply, it's an agency in Beijing. It has employees secretly working in all consulates around the world. And these employees, United Front agents, make connections to community groups, many of them, business groups, student groups, and they seek to influence Canadian politicians of all parties. Their efforts are to, encourage influential people around the world to be supportive of China's foreign policy. And that's a very, it's a somewhat open aspect of what they're doing, but the more secretive aspects are sort of what experts would call threats, intimidation, and also improper encouragement or forms of corruption to get people of all groups in Canada and around the world to try to do what Beijing wants.
So, what was the purpose of China buying back all those PPEs? Do they want to sell it now at higher prices? Is that the motive, or there was another motive?
It's hard to know exactly what their motive of. What we can say from research of official Chinese government websites, United Front websites, official Chinese state media, that they, in their own words, they said all overseas Chinese need to participate in this invisible battle to fight the coronavirus in China and secure scarce supplies of safety masks for, as they say, the motherland. That's China. And, so how they did that is they set up social media groups and directions from the consulates in Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto especially. And they set up these operations where people were reportedly shopping day and night for masks, buying them anywhere they could, organizing, coming back to the airport with boxes and shipping them back to China. We found in Toronto through Chinese associated airlines such as HNA.
Mm-hmm. So when all this was happening, what was the government of Canada doing at that time?
Well, according to two credible political sources, first of all, the MP Erin O'Toole, who is a defense expert, told me that in January he became aware through his sources in the Chinese-Canadian community, also military sources and manufacturers of safety masks, that China was essentially trying to buy all of the N95 masks they could. And so Mr. O'Toole told me that he is aware that some manufacturers contacted Canada's government, senior bureaucrats, and warned them China is buying all the masks that they possibly can. Should Canada do something to buy their more masks or protect supply? And according to Mr. O'Toole, Canada didn't take this action. In fact, as people know, Canada donated 16 tons of PPE to China in early February. So this would be right after those warnings occurred. One more piece of information for you. This was corroborated by Mexico's former ambassador to Beijing, told me that he had recognized the exact same thing from Mexican manufacturer Supply Logistics. In mid-January, he was hearing China is buying all the masks they possibly can, and he recognized the same thing was happening in the United States as well in January.
So then Donald Trump's criticism of China is justified, you think?
Well, I wouldn't speak at all for Donald Trump or Secretary of State Pompeo, who are making some very strong accusations against China at this point. However, critics around the world are, I would say, there's a consensus now that China, the evidence is very clear. They were suppressing information about the pandemic risk. We have seen, for example, the former federal Liberal Justice Minister Irwin Cotler has sent out a letter stating that China covered this up. In terms of President Trump's allegations that China has covered this up, now suggesting that maybe this is tied to a lab in China, I have no information on that. But what I can tell you is that many critics in many countries around the world are saying that China has covered up the pandemic, and China has many bits of information that it still has not shared with the world.
Well, this United Front or these United Fronts, they contain so many things in them. Members are monitored by the RCMP, and I think Canadian Security Intelligence Services also monitoring them.
In my investigation, I found that one concerning aspect was the connection of some suspects in casino money laundering investigations that I have reported on in British Columbia, I found that some of these suspects were openly meeting with figures that I found were connected to the United Front safety mask operations. So there's a concern there. I don't have the information that any alleged criminals were involved in the buying or selling of safety masks. However, I can document that there are connections between people allegedly investigated by the RCMP for organized crime and these United Front groups. I would like to learn more about those connections. However, the group members that I contacted have not responded to me. We also do know that, yes, CSIS agents are aware of some of the people involved in the United Front safety mask operations. Mm-hmm. I don't have a lot of information on CSIS's official view on whether they are investigating this, but we do know that they are aware of some of these people.
But now, Mr. Cooper, my curiosity is that when these Canadian bureaucrats or the CSIS alerted that China was hoarding PPEs, then why did Canada government ship those 16 tons of PPEs to China?
I think that's a question that is very important right now. Those questions are being asked in Ottawa. The answers we have so far is that Public Health Canada say that this shipment was approved because at least some of the equipment was judged to be about to expire in February and March, and also that Health Canada believed that this donation would not compromise Canada's supply. So again, we shortly after this story was published, we asked Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, were you aware that China was undertaking this global mask buying operation? And if so, why did you and the government not protect Canada's supply? He did not directly answer the question, but said that his answer was Canada's intelligence agencies have been following this matter in January. And beyond that, he didn't want to comment.
So are these members of the United Fronts are penetrating into other countries also, or just there in Canada?
The evidence from intelligence, actually the reports from intelligence agencies and experts do say that the United Front is increasing its activities, especially in countries such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the United States. I can tell you and your listeners that the FBI has stated that the number one threat facing that country, the United States, is these influence operation networks from China. They're involved in not only trying to influence leaders, politicians, but in trying to secure strategic resources. That would be technology, cyber, intellectual property, and many other strategic needs for China. So it's a world. From my research, this was a worldwide operation, and United Front websites in China were open about it. After they had bought the masks, they in fact report on it, and it seems they use this as propaganda of a successful operation.
Well, since your report has become public now, do you still think that China has a lot of influence over Canada?
According to the experts that we spoke to, such as Jonathan Manthorpe, the veteran journalist and author of a book on China influence called Claws of the Panda, his view is that the United Front is not only extremely influential in Canada, but that it has been successful in penetrating many business groups, student groups, universities, media, all areas of society, Mr. Manthorpe says, have been penetrated by the United Front. And one thing, I think is important to say, he says that Chinese Canadians across the country want the rest of Canadians to know that they do not agree with the Chinese Communist Party's incursions and attempts to influence them. They would like other Canadians to be aware of these issues and help combat any nefarious or wrong influence from China. Mr. Manthorpe says, though, that most Canadian leaders just aren't aware and really aren't ready to listen about this problem.
Mr. Cooper, anything else you would like to add to this conversation today?
Well, I really thank you for your time and your listeners' time, and I will say that, again, it's important to note that the Chinese-Canadian community, from my from the interviews that I have had, does not welcome this. Of course, there are some groups that the evidence is clear are under the influence of Beijing, but there are many, many citizens that are resistant to this, and they want the rest of Canada to know that this can't stand.
Mr. Cooper, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that. Looking forward to talk to you again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sam Cooper, National Investigative Journalist ਹਨ, ਗਲੋਬਲ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਅਖਬਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਲੋਬਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਸ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਸੀਨੋ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮਨੀ ਲਾਂਡਰਿੰਗ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ, ਕਾਲੇ ਧਨ ਨੂੰ ਚਿੱਟਾ ਧਨ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਚੱਕਰ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਨੰਗਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹੀ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਚੀਨ ਦੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸੂਈਏ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਆ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਫਰੰਟ ਬਣਾ ਰੱਖਿਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਜਰਨਲਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਹੋਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹ ਪੈਨੀਟਰੇਟ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਆ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਇਨਫਲੂਐਂਸ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ। ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ PPEs ਦੇ ਮਾਸਕ ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਰੇ ਗਾਊਨਸ ਵਗੈਰਾ, ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਚੀਨ ਨੂੰ ਖਰੀਦ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਫਰੰਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਭੇਜੇ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੇ ਖੁਦ ਵੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 16 ਟਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਕਿਸਮ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਚੀਨ ਨੂੰ ਭੇਜ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀ, ਜਦ ਕਿ ਚੀਨ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਪੈਣੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਆ। ਉਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਅਹਿਸਾਸ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਾ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ। ਸੋ ਫਿਰ ਉਹੀ ਸਮਾਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਚ ਗਿਆ, ਉਹ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਮਹਿੰਗੇ ਭਾਅ 'ਤੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਵੇਚ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਦੁਨੀਆ ਭਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸਮਾਨ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ, ਇਕੱਲੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ 'ਚੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਫਰੰਟ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਣਾਏ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਚੀਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ।
Thank you for listening to another Red FM podcast. Don't forget to hit subscribe and check out our Red FM Canada YouTube channel. For further info, log on to our Red FM social media platforms or visit redfm.ca.